Well, welcome back to another presentation from Virtualize Everything. I want to start by telling you guys, because you've accused me in the past when I'm in a mood like this, that I'm being somewhat condescending. I'm just not feeling well. I really have no condescending nature to me, and I really just like to teach and learn about different technologies inside of the IT field, and that's why I even do this. Believe me, if I thought I was the greatest, I just wouldn't teach you. That's that. So, with that, we're going to move on to today's video. And I've received a few emails since we've started doing Docker content, and that they were asking for a GUI interface. Apparently, some of you guys don't like to use the command line. Now, I personally don't fully understand that, but everybody has their own way, and this is this. So I did some research, and there seems to be two different ways of having a web interface for Docker. One's called Portainer, and the other's called Rancher. They both do other things, including managing Kubernetes, and it seemed like from some research that Portainer was the better one to use if you weren't getting into Kubernetes and some other things. So we did some more research, and I figured out how to install and set up Portainer. So that's what today's video is about. If we switch over to my desktop view, you can see a bunch of the work, and you can actually see on the right-hand side the web browser with Portainer running. That's because I have it all set up at this time, and I'm going to walk you through how I did it. So here's what the Portainer web interface looks like, and you can even notice that there's an IP address there inside my local network, so that I am indeed running this on my Docker server, which is actually a VM inside of my Proxmox server. So I'm not going to really explore too much of Portainer today and focus more on how I set it up using Docker Compose as well as Docker, and also how I made a service so that Docker Compose will run every single time my server reboots or shuts down and restarts. Alright, so let's head over to Atom now, and here inside of Atom you'll see that I have some files. One of them is just some note commands. I always like to include them in my folder, so if I go back and reference this at any time, I have a better idea of what commands I was using at that time. The next one is going to be my services. These are the services, or this is the instruction file that I'm going to use to make Portainer start and stop with my server as it shuts down, restart, or boots up. And the last one is my Docker Compose file. This is the file that I'm going to use to give Docker the directions on how to start my Portainer image. So we're going to use the version 3 of the YAML script, and then we're going to create a container name and a service in Portainer. Our image is going to be the latest version of Portainer CE, and then our container name, once again, is going to be Portainer. We're going to restart this always, so if for some reason this image fails and it shuts down, it's going to restart. We're exposing port 9000 on the container, which is the port where Portainer naturally wants to work, to port 5, the port 9000 on our server, so we can use our server's IP address instead of the IP address that is given inside of Docker. As you know, Docker handles its own web management. So Docker will assign Docker its own IP addresses inside of the server. And it deals with this by doing a proxy pass at the end on a port. So this is what our directions are. Then we're going to assign two separate volumes from the host OS, or the server's OS, to Docker. This will give Docker the ability, or rather Portainer, the ability to save files and data between sessions. So if it shut down or restarted, it's able to know what it's doing when it boots up again. Lastly, we're going to create a volume group called Portainer Data. This is where the data from Portainer is installed. No other actions need to be done at this time or ever as of the current version of Docker Compose for this, except for the two lines of volume and Portainer data. Alright, so then we have our services file here where I don't fully understand. I did a little bit of copying and pasting here, and I wasn't able to get a complete understanding, but from my tutorial, we're going to be starting a Docker container. So the requires equals Docker service, and after we also need to have Docker services. Now from services, our restart always is going to be there. So again, the system will try to always restart. And then for our start, our execute start is going to equal our path to our Docker Compose install, -F for force, and then the path to our Docker Compose YAML file for up and down. Then our install is not fully understood for me at this time, but from my research is needed to be in there. And without it, it seems not to work at all. So with that, let's head over to my SSH window and we can run, well, all right. So we need to go touch upon where some stuff is. So if I run ls, you can see we have a folder of Portainer. If I open that folder of Portainer, you're going to notice that I only have, well, I have the Docker Compose and then my services and my command. But I only need to have my Docker Compose YAML file here because we're actually going to use the command cp and we're going to copy that file off to another extension inside of our system. So here's where I ran the cp command where I copied the portainer.service to etc systemmd system portainer service. And that's because all services need to be stored inside of that file in order to work correctly. And then after I made that copy, I ran the command sudo systemctl enable portainer service and then sudo systemctl dart portainer services. So if you'd like to see them those commands a little bit bigger here, I'm going to open them on my Atom window and we're going to browse to the commands.txt. Here's the file path that I use and here's the two commands that I use to start the service. After this, Portainer started up and was running. No Docker Compose up-d was required unless I wanted to do a test of the YAML file. And my server was up and running and able at this point to host my Portainer image. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. We're able to follow along as we didn't actually go through the install. We just walked you through the steps we took here at the end. And I would also like to mention if you need path files or commands, check out the blog in the comment section for all of that information. As always, have a good night.